Hello, DragonCon. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a great panel talking about Britpop, the history of, the current scene of, anything relating to Britpop. So I hope you enjoy it. This is a panel as part of DragonCon Virtual. We are part of the BritTrack. My name is Alan. Nice to meet you all. And I've got some amazing panelists joining me today. So let's introduce everybody and tell us who you are and kind of give us a little spin about your credentials and that kind of thing. Widgett, start us off.
Sure. I'm Widgett Walls. I'm the chief cook and bottle washer of needcoffee.com. I'm doing panels at DragonCon since roughly 1893. And in fact, my first panel was a BritTrack panel that I got roped into, but and they've never let me leave. So yeah, I basically my credentials are I listen to too much music, so you don't have to. That's and these guys are worse than I am. So I just basically take notes on what they're gonna say.
I've learned a lot from these guys. JM, tell us who you are.
Oh, hey, I'm James Tuffley. I'm also with needcoffee.com, and apparently I'm regenerating, so I could be somebody else by the end of the panel. Either that or I'm stuck in a Phil Collins video as the light's coming up. So, but I write about music, and which is right, I'm probably worse than he is.
Rob, how you doing?
Hold on, Tuffley, mention the randomizer.
Oh yeah, I make a lot of playlists on Spotify, and some of them are called Randomizer, and they're dated. So, and they have new stuff, old stuff, odd stuff every 2 weeks or so. It's been a little weird during the Corona time, so it's sporadic, but it's still happening.
Good to know. Rob, who are you?
Hi, I'm Rob. I write about music and do podcast stuff for. Is he up this way? With that guy, Widgett. Thank you.
It's the Hollywood Squares thing. You'll figure it out. It's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
He would be. He'd be the Greg Brady Square. Sorry. So I do some stuff for needcoffee.com and a couple other websites as it kind of happens. And I've written about music for the Chicago Reader and the Riverfront Times and soon a couple other places. And then I host a radio show called Juxtaposition in St. Louis, and yeah. And
I think we should mention Juxtaposition just hit a big anniversary.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I just did my 25th anniversary show in late August. Yeah, so I can't believe I've been doing it for 25 years. I was looking over all of the playlists of things that I played in 1995, and it's terribly embarrassing, but also like, what is this? So,
I mean, Rob, don't be so hard on yourself. You were like 12 when you started.
Right.
Actually, technically, I started at a station before that when I was like right out of high school. So I've been doing this since I was like between 17 and a half. So yes, I am old. And I listen to
Are you?
Yes, and I've been listening to way too much international and foreign radio during this pandemic that like my list of music I have to hear now is just bonkers. And then what Tuffley does with the randomizer, he'll put out a list of stuff, and then I'm like, how did I miss that? And then there's something else I got to run and find, and it's all bonkers.
All right, so we're talking about Britpop, the rich spectrum that is Britpop. And as kind of a starting point, I want to go back in time, a pretty big jump back, because this year, 50 years ago, 1970, was the end of the Beatles. It's also probably the most prolific period for the Beatles they ever had. We got the last album, Let It Be, the film Let It Be. We had the last two Beatles singles on the chart. All the Beatles released solo albums that year, including two from Ringo, Paul's first. They all had singles on the charts, or at least would have had any singles been released from Paul's album. And we got the single that would become the first Beatle or ex-Beatle #1, which was George Harrison's big song everybody remembers from 1970. So let's talk about really briefly. We're not going to turn this into a Beatles panel, but let's talk really briefly about 1970 and how the end of the Beatles shifted everything in music history. So jump in.
Well, I think, you get to the end of a decade, and every decade's like this.
Yeah.
You get an ending of something,
yeah.
right? Although I like to say the monkey's head killed the 60s, but that's a separate discussion. But the Beatles breakup or the Beatles dissolving, or however you want to look at that, is kind of a shift from a lot of things, and especially a shift in the album format. Especially when you go from especially when you're comparing like the early Beatles records where it's all everybody did it in one track to like multi-tracking, and how everybody else kind of picked that up and took on, because what we get from that essentially is two things. We get like electronic music and Kraftwerk,
right? And
on the other side of it, you get Yes and Genesis and Prog, and layers and layers and layers of stuff. Yeah. So that kind of carries on through the decade. And then also some of those recording techniques also went kind of toward disco records through the electronic door. So.
Well, I think one of the things is probably that a lot of people slept a lot easier with the Beatles gone, because I know Brian Wilson, if I remember correctly, was just devastated after hearing what they were doing with all the multi-track stuff. There's a great documentary on Sgt. Pepper that if you have not seen that was BBC, right, Rob?
Yeah, it was BBC.
Okay.
And the PBS shows it periodically.
Okay, cool. If you've not seen that, you really should. But I know, Pink Floyd, all of these bands were, I think it was Pink Floyd that when Sgt. Pepper came out, they were on tour, on the road, pulled off to the side of the road because a radio station was playing the entire thing in its entire, and they just listened through it and were just amazed. So that's one thing, is that I think people could breathe easier. The second thing, and this is I have to keep reminding myself of, is that just like Faulty Towers is only 12 episodes, and I will say that, and then 5 minutes from now I could say it again, and your brain will still be amazed, because you can watch all 12 episodes and you'll still think there's more, right?
Yeah.
So the Beatles were basically 63 to 70. They did all of that in 63 to 70. They went from, Please Please Me to, like you said, through Sgt. Pepper, the White Album, and then out Let It Be and out the Skylight. And it's one of those things where you go, it would have been really cool to see what they'd done next. But then I also think, what the heck would they have done next? I mean, where do you go after that? I have no idea. So I think they, like so many things didn't, well, not so many things, like so few things didn't overstay their welcome and didn't get rubbish. So
yeah, agreed. You got anything, Rob?
Widge pretty much covered a lot of it. What's interesting with this is that the Beatles are going away in 1970, but you still have the Rolling Stones. And what's interesting is that while the Beatles still are hugely saturated in contemporary British music, the fingerprints of the Stones, particularly in the early 70s, are literally everywhere. Okay. And the Stones are sort of like the bridge that we get from the Beatles to glam rock and this acceptance of soul music, American soul music in Britain. And I think that's really important going ahead, because a lot of the pop music that you got later in the 70s and 80s is steeped in a lot of that like Rolling Stones, blues, soul music, and a lot of the like Dusty Springfield stuff coming out of the 70s and Lulu and things like that. So that is kind of important. But yes, the Beatles, that era with the Beatles is absolutely groundbreaking. And you should see Howard Goodall, who did the music for Red Dwarf, did that documentary on Sgt. Pepper's. You should find it and watch it. It's incredible. And also, And also, the weekend that this airs for Dragon Con, Peter Jackson's Beatles movie is airing. It comes out. His documentary on Let It Be. So Peter Jackson has taken basically all the existing footage from Let It Be and just done this huge documentary on it. And McCartney was allegedly in tears. Ringo thought it was amazing. Peter Jackson talked about, I sat in a room with Ringo Starr and Paul McCartney and screened my movie, and it was he felt intimidated. And if Peter Jackson feels intimidated, then I'm all for it, because that doesn't happen. So yeah, I mean, again, I don't think you can look at any music after the era of the Beatles really without thinking about the Beatles. In the same way you don't look at the 50s without Little Richard or Elvis or the 30s and stuff with the blues. So anyway.
I hadn't heard that the Peter Jackson film was coming out next weekend. I thought the last I heard it was still on hold until sometime next year.
The original release date, let me look at this, because the original release date that I had heard was the week of September 4th. So I could be completely wrong, and it could have moved.
So everybody check
I hope you're right, and that I hope you're right, and that it's good, because I mean, I personally have been in tears in a Peter Jackson film, but it was the King Kong remake.
That was just because of lack of editing.
Sorry. Sorry.
Yes, it's been okay. It's been pushed back.
It's too soon. It's too soon.
So yeah, it was supposed to come out Labor Day weekend. It has been pushed back to August of 2021.
Right, that's what I thought. Okay, that's such a shame, man. I'm so looking forward to seeing that,
because I had seen stuff up until last week, but still this weekend. So, thank you, Alan.
Oh, sure, no problem.
Because I would have spent hours looking for it that weekend.
Right. I can't talk. Okay, so the Beatles were clearly a seismic impact on music history. I'm interested to know from you what you think some of the other big turning points in British music have been throughout the last 50 or so years.
Ooh, I'll go, because a lot of that is influenced by bands that were touring through. Kraftwerk comes through in like 72, 73. And right as that's happening, you get Roxy and like the beginning of glam and all of that. And then, later in the decade, you get, the Ramones coming through, the Ramones and the New York Dolls coming through. And that gets you all the punk bands, that even gets you up to the Smiths, with the New York Dolls. So a lot of influential other acts coming through. The Motown tours that came through also influenced a lot of this. So a lot of it was a lot of music, particularly the British music, was influenced by what they got imported. Even going back to like the Beatles, but all of the bands could start to tour now because travel was a little bit easier. And in some of these cases, especially for the Ramones, it was cheaper to tour Europe than it was the States. So that's why you get a lot of that.
Okay. Well, I'll throw in on Pink Floyd. I think is a huge thing, pretty much across the board. Just like with the Beatles. In my mind, the Beatles they're still the Beatles, but they just sort of morph as they go along into different bands that are still called the Beatles as they go, but they're still coherently the Beatles. You could still look at it and call them Beatles. Pink Floyd, not just because of personnel changes, shall we say, has been as they went along. You basically had the completely psychedelic Pink Floyd. It was Syd Barrett, and up to a point where I think with Dark Side, you start to get the huge concept album. How big is this stage you're gonna get type of thing, that they take to a logical or illogical extreme. I don't know. With the Wall, which Roger Waters still does and screws up the ending, which I'll never forgive him for. And then after that, you get still the same big bombastic thing like Pulse and Delicate Sound of Thunder, where it's just basically. I would love to see where this fits in the whole history of arena rock, but this is a band that you would go not necessarily to see the band, but actually to sit back and watch the spectacle of it, as opposed to that you go to and you sit back and you watch whatever you can see because you're in a different area code from where the band is playing in some kind of stadium. And that'll be even more so now that we're, in the middle of the apocalypse. But I think Pink Floyd and what they did with the concept album and what they did with touring and what they did with just evolving influenced a lot of people that came afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
I think that what Widge touched on about Floyd is hugely important, but also Floyd did this amazing idea that the Beatles also did it as well. That the idea that the album artwork and everything comes together as a package. And that's a huge thing that you start to see with and Floyd really, and Zeppelin to a certain extent, sort of took that and ran with it. You can't overlook Northern Soul at this point, because as much as there's touring bands, people in England are still going to Northern Soul clubs and hearing these amazing soul records. So you get, that's a huge influence on David Bowie. You get, Alan, you may have heard of David Bowie.
I'm not sure who.
Also, in terms of British bands, it would be an influence. You still have the Kinks are still hugely influenced later. Bowie, Joy Division. You can't overlook really the power of Joy Division or that whole punk movement. In America, though, I think you've got the Velvet Underground is a huge influence on tons and tons of British bands, and later Iggy Pop, and Talking Heads to a certain extent, because you get a lot of these sort of like angular sort of British bands that sort of listen to Talking Heads too. So
I would say this kind of folds into something you were already saying, but I think the first Elvis Costello album was a big deal. I want to talk about how you first started getting interested in British music. Like, what was your origin story getting in? And at that time, how did you discover new British music? Like, what were their sources for discovering new bands that you hadn't heard of or new songs that you wouldn't have been exposed to otherwise?
I don't know. Maybe I have the most radical version of this. I don't know. I was listening to my sister's hand-me-down hair metal records.
Nice.
Longest distance to go. But somewhere in the summer of like maybe my freshman year of high school, I got Sonic Youth's Daydream Nation from Columbia House, because Columbia House, and I needed to fill the 12 for a penny.
Yep.
But from Daydream Nation, from Sonic Youth, I got to like a bunch of punk bands. And then also at the same time, I got into New Order, because I had just gotten actual MTV proper, not Friday Night Videos, not Night Flight, MTV proper. And one of the first things I saw was the True Faith video, which I couldn't explain what that was, but I still can't, but that's that. And I didn't realize until MTV got crafty one day and did their rock block thing. I didn't realize that Joy Division and New Order were the same band. And they had played it in a block of Joy Division because apparently they only had two New Order videos at the time. I don't know how that worked.
Probably.
But they played Level Tear Us Apart at the end of the block. And then the VJ came back on and said, "Oh yeah, it's the same band." Really? So I had to go back and got Joy Division. And I was kind of into the Clash kind of but I didn't make the connection. So, Clash and Police when I was a kid, but I never quite made the connection. But as I got older and sort of kind of getting the building blocks together, Joy Division and the Clash and the Pretenders and all that kind of stuff, I kind of got into that neck of the woods and kind of went from there. As far as finding new stuff, also we should mention Rob's t-shirt. I started to listen to John Peel's show when BBC World Service ran it in America, which is a very brief space of time in the 90s, apparently. And that's how I found stuff through BBC World Service on public radio. And I kind of got the John Peel show that way and also found stuff that way. But mostly the John Peel show for the early stuff. And then also in later times, BBC Six Music has been really good with keeping me current because I listen to it a lot.
Excellent.
Well, I don't remember a time when I wasn't listening to the Beatles because my dad had all of the albums on vinyl. I think I listened to Sgt. Pepper so much I wore it down until we probably had to replace it. So I honestly started off with the Beatles in the womb. From there, I wasn't doing hair metal. I was doing Miles Davis and Dave Brubeck.
Yours was better. Okay, yours was better. You win.
The odd thruple. But I never really where is this music from thing. I mean, I understood the Beatles were from, the UK and whatnot, but when you have, and kids ask your parents about this, when you only have the radio for where you get new music from, because you used to have to actually purchase music to hear music that wasn't on the radio. I know we can't get into that now. It's too much to deal with. But and the other thing, Tuffley, we didn't have MTV. We would take a VHS tape for TBS and record like 6 hours of the 8-hour Night Track show.
Night Tracks?
That was nothing. That was nothing but music videos. That for the week, and then right over it with the next run, like the next Friday night. That's what we had.
Night Tracks. I always go to Night Flight first.
Yeah.
So that's where I got new music, and then basically there were other things like there were crazy radio shows. I didn't have the BBC, but there was Dr. Shepard's Electric Medicine Show in the North Alabama area, where he would, he introduced me to stuff like Tom Waits. So he was always sneaking stuff in like that, and there were great record stores that, again, kids ask your parents. You would go to a record store, an actual place, and then you would basically, the people there would throw music at you, and you could listen to it, and then decided if you wanted to again purchase it and take it home to listen to. It was a different time, but I always would forage for new music, and and so it's just ballooned from there. The amount of music I have is ridiculous. I said I was addicted. I never said it was a problem.
All right. So my interest in British music sort of started at the same time as my love of comics and fanzines and Doctor Who and and science fiction. So when I was about maybe 13 or 14, I went to Hollister, California to see my grandfather, right? Because my grandma was sick and we were out there. And he had a little study, which I call a cave of clutter, but he had a shortwave radio. And I was picking up what I think is KUSF now, but I'm not sure. I was picking up all these like really small indie radio stations because I was listening at night and I was like, this is the coolest thing ever, right? Ooh, there's something else other than fishing boats. What is this? So I heard the Specials and Madness and the Pogues. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And then, that's kind of lying around and it's dormant. And then when I was in high school, literally half a mile from my house, they opened a juice bar. So it's everything. This is like 1983. This is everything you could do in an actual real disco except drink, right? And so you go and they play videos, they play records, and I literally everything coming out was Brit. I mean, you got the Duran, so you got Duran Duran in real time, you got Culture Club in real time, you got Let's Dance in real time, but you also got like Bros, So I mean, so that was cool, and that kind of led me to going to record stores and just scouring import bins. Now the other thing too is that when I would go buy. Kids, ask your parents. When you go to the store, the bookstores, I'd pick up my Doctor Who magazine and my Doctor Who Target novels. They also sold a magazine called Star Hits, which in England was Smash Hits, right? And that thing, even though it was glossy and written like a fourth grader, just had literally, it was kind of like this is what's new and cool coming out of England, right? So literally for like 4 years, I got every single one of them, and that was cool. And then when I started going to record stores more, they would give me when Sounds and Melody Maker and New Music Express, when they were old and I couldn't sell them anymore, they'd give them to me. So then that and scouring through import bins, just it was bad because it was literally everything was coming in like multiple ways. And then you know, I did the whole college disillusioned kid who liked all the music nobody else liked thing. And then when I got to junior college, I got to college radio, and then that opened up this huge doorway in '87 because 1987 was sort of like the launch year for college radio. Literally everything. You could like go into a room, it's like just take a stack of records and not pay for them and just listen to them. It's like, oh, I don't like this, I like this, I like this, I don't. And so that was cool. And then that sort of prepared me for this mess now of where you get 70,000 resources a day sending you music.
You mentioned night flights and Friday night videos a minute ago. That's ones that had a big impact on me, and they would play things that I never saw anyplace else. Mm-hmm. There used to be a syndicated radio show called London Calling.
Yes.
And I remember, like, I would hang out with my best friend on Sunday night. One of our local stations would play that show from 10 to 12. So I would drive home from my buddy's house and listen to it, and then like kind of sit in my parking lot in my driveway and listen to the rest of that show. And I heard so many things. Like, I remember the night that I first heard Julia Fordham, watching Night Flights. I remember the first time I ever saw the Ashes to Ashes video. You know, I mean, that had a huge impact on me. But there's another thing that I thought of last night that I introduced me to so many bands and songs that I would never have heard of before. The Young Ones.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, yes. I'm certain that I would never have heard an Amazulu song had it not been for Young Ones.
Like Madness and Motorhead and
The Damned.
And
Damned, yep.
And Tuffley, didn't they? Wasn't that because they had to have a musical act in order to qualify as a particular kind of show? Wasn't that right? Yeah. Am I remembering that correct? Yeah.
Yeah, because they were shooting on video, and because of the way the BBC works as a remit, they had to have a band to count it as a variety show, because apparently there were too many comedy shows on the schedule. So at that point, there were too many comedy shows on the schedule, so they had to do the Young Ones as a variety show.
Yeah, and they also could get a little bit of record store money in as well to sort of kick in to help pay for production, which was also really nice.
And it was great too, because it sort of had a subversive element to it. They had bands on that would never have been on many other shows.
Which also, point of order, is also what SCTV had to do, which is why they had a band on. And like the first couple of seasons, they had a band on like every episode. SCTV did that for the same reason.
All right, so this weekend is Record Store Day. And this year, Record Store Day is kind of weird because it's not happening in April, and it's split up over a couple of months. Have there been any big releases that you have been excited for this year, and what's been your favorite acquisition so far?
So I can't get into it here, but I got some of the stuff from England. So I got the Pale Saints reissue and the Wolfgang Press reissues, which are great. I got the New Order Peel Sessions, which is basically the same old John Peel Sessions that was out a million years ago, but like everything with New Order, re-released and repackaged and remastered again.
Yeah.
But I got all
it's a different Peter Saville cover, okay?
No, that's part of it's part of it though, right? But also I got all the Bowie stuff I wanted. So I'm very, very, very happy. There's a really cool concert of Bowie. There's a really nice version of Changes Bowie on vinyl. Yeah. I don't really go crazy about Record Store Day because it's kind of like, oh, it's Record Store Day. Let's all go to the record store. Ha ha ha. And then all these really annoying people that you have no idea why they're here are suddenly buying records that, you know. But if I look at the list, I see what I want, and then I figure out how to get it, and I pay for it. And like I have some friends in England that I get stuff from American Record Store Day for them, and they get some stuff from me for Britain, and we mail it to each other. All is well in the world. So, and the great thing about Record Store Day, kids, is that most of it comes out later. Like 2/3 of the stuff is already streaming.
Right.
I know the Bowie stuff is coming out, but I like to own it. And I don't get like crazy obsessive about collecting records anymore. It's just, you know, if it's something that interests me and I haven't heard it, if I can at least have it in a format where I can hear it, I'm fine. But like, I literally, if I kept every record in my house, I would get killed and I could not move. So I've literally gutted my record collection just because it's like obnoxious. The amount of crap that, you know, ooh, here's the Ethel Merman disco record, or, you know, here's the Paul Lynde spoken word record. Ooh, I want this, you know. There's so much bizarre stuff that you just have to sort of so while Record Store Day is in spirit awesome, you have to kind of be careful with these things because records are like cocaine, kids. I'm just saying, be careful.
Yeah.
I go to record stores in the non-COVID times pretty much weekly, but I skipped Record Store Day this time. That's probably pulling a card somewhere, but I've been doing a lot of Bandcamp Fridays. My wallet will tell me I've been doing a hell of a lot of Bandcamp Fridays. And I bought mostly merch. But I know, and we'll probably get to these guys later, but Idols did their pre-release on the new album, through Bandcamp first. So that's where I'm getting that from. And a lot of that stuff, just merch, and a lot of the Bandcamp sharing their, you know, giving their cut back to the bands. Some of those bands flipped it back over to charities. Some of them flipped it back over to their crew. New Order had a crew T-shirt, which I may have purchased. But yeah, I've been doing more of the Bandcamp Fridays thing and just been finding tons of stuff, British and non-British stuff. But yeah, particularly I think I got the new Idols record, and there was, I believe, there was a Squeeze, that they did the Squeeze covers that they put out, that I got a couple of those.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't really do Record Store Day. I have to be very careful because, as Rob said, it's cocaine. I don't, because if I start collecting something, I will go absolutely. I have no safety check, if that makes sense. There's no valve I can shut off once it gets going. So you know, I don't collect vinyl, partly because for my own sanity's sake, and partly because I again don't need the room. I basically took all of my CDs and threw away all the cases and put them into binders. So what I will do is what?
That scratches the discs, but that's okay. No, it's fine.
No. I got special binders.
Okay, then you're fine.
Special binders.
Okay.
I didn't buy no cheap binders to scratch. No. Anyway.
Elephant care of your CDs next on BritTrack.
Yeah. So what I will do, will find the stuff. Generally, my process is I will find it through like BBC Radio or streaming. On the Record Store Day, if I see something, I'll wait for it to hit MP3, and then I will snag it that way. So I will generally keep it on a Spotify playlist or somewhere else, and then eventually, as I get coin, I turn that into my actual MP3s that I own. My backlog is stupid. So yeah, And I'm behind on everything. It's because I constantly hear like, oh yeah. Did you know, Widge, that there was a great Indonesian psychedelic music movement in the 70s? No, I didn't know that. But by God, I've got to go investigate it now. I mean, it's just, I'll stop.
I'll stop.
No. Don't stop. And by the way, it's too late. This guy is the one who said, hey, by the way, did you know
there's fine too. I do that.
There's a BBC radio show hosted by Craig Charles. And next thing, that's 3 hours a week. And then, did you know Don Letts has a show? Oh my God, that's 2 hours. And it's just the backlog. The backlog is ridiculous.
But I didn't know about.
That's why Jarvis stopped his show, specifically because you couldn't keep up.
I know.
I didn't know about Giles until you told me that.
What?
I didn't know about the Giles Peterson show until you mentioned it to me. And
I thought you mentioned that to me. I can't even
you mentioned that to
anymore.
Me. And then you introduced me to FIP, which is the French radio app, which is like
that's my wife. That's my wife.
I just have a lousy commute. Because in the Metro Atlanta area, I have a lousy commute to my day job, and I have a lot of time on my hands, so I got to do something with that.
Yeah. All right, let's talk.
So what random playlist can I go with today? Oh, just this. Bink. Off we go.
Let's talk recommendations. Let's talk. Everybody was supposed to pick 2 or 3 things that they think our audience needs to hear. So let's go around the circle. We'll start with Widge, and do one of your recommendations around the circle. Okay.
Sure. So first of all, Idols, I'm not going to do because these guys are going to do it. So I will. I just wanted to scare them. I will say that there is a fantastic album. It came out in 2018, but it's half UK in that it's the Underworld Iggy Pop album, Tea Time Dub Encounters, which is just amazing in that you've got Underworld providing the music with Iggy Pop being Iggy Pop, just telling stories, random spoken word stuff, and it's the kind of thing that you go, that should not work. It's like the bumblebee. How does that fly? We don't know. It shouldn't, but it works. So it's so gloriously weird. I recommend everyone listen to it. I think if you need to start with one track, I'll have to look up the name of the track, but he's talking about smoking on airplanes and how that used to be a thing, and that leads off into some story. I think the track's like 8 minutes long. While these guys are talking, I'll look it up. What's that?
The song about the shirt. Like Iggy Pop does a song about why he doesn't wear a shirt.
Yeah. Oh, Bells and Circles. Bells and Circles is the one. But yeah, Get Your Shirt is the one that you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's like an EP. It's 4 tracks, but please check it out.
All right, Tuffley.
Well, on similar to the thing we're just talking about with Underworld and Iggy Pop, NoFX and Frank Turner just put out a split covers record. Sorry, Wob.
This happens all
West
the time.
Coast versus Wessex, and half of it is NoFX covering Frank Turner songs, and the other half is Frank Turner covering NoFX. And it's as fun as you think it sounds. It is.
Mm-hmm.
It's really great. It's lots of fun, and especially for the strange, chaotic world we're in right now, you need fun things. So that is the first fun thing I have. That one. It's great.
So, everyone, Idols album comes out September 25th. Idols. That's the first. Just look it up. It's like everything that madness sounds like in terms of like your brain not working and things. It's So Idols, kids, trust me. Also, sort of piggybacking onto Idols is Fontaine's DC.
Mm-hmm.
There's this weird movement of music coming out of Ireland and Northern Ireland right now. And Fontaine's DC are kind of like spearheading it. And they have an album called A Hero's Death. It's kind of along the same lines of the Idols, but not as angry and visceral. And they don't name check Mary Berry. Fontaine's DC. And they have a really good sense of melody. So if you like Wire or the Buzzcocks or really short, bursted power pop songs, go with that.
And the previous record, Doggerel, is fantastic as well.
Yeah.
And real quick to go back to Idols, if you want to sample it, find the Mr. Motivator music video that they did recently during lockdown. It is an anthem for our times.
So there's a Gondry video for Model Village, which is just amazingly cartoony and wonderful.
Yeah.
All right, my first pick is going to be a couple of years ago, Kate Bush reissued her entire collection in a remastered form in 2 box sets, and the packaging is gorgeous. The remasters are really good. The second box set includes a 4-disc set of all like non-album stuff. soundtrack songs and B-sides and all these kind of things. And that 4-disc set has now been released individually from that box set. And, you know, it's just got some of what I consider to be essential Kate Bush tunes like Burning Bridge and Under the Ivy and all these kind of great songs. So I would highly recommend both of the box sets. But if you only want to get the rarer stuff, I would go for that 4-disc collection that's now been released individually. All right, round 2.
Okay.
Round 2, fight.
All right. So I'm going to mention the Black is the Night anthology from The Damned. And that's, sorry.
No, you're fine.
This is just, if you're keeping score at home, this is just Rob being sighing for the rest of the time.
This is what our podcast is like. Literally, Tuffley or him. Like, yeah.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing. So Black is the Night, the title track is a new track, and it is so good. It has no business coming out from a band that's been around this long. A track that tight and awesome sounding. So apart from just it being, you know, as it says, the definitive anthology, I absolutely love that particular track. So that's why that particular set.
So something completely different, switching gears, Dua Lipa put out a record before all this happened, called Future Nostalgia, which is if you need a fluffy dance record, and you need a really good fluffy dance record, that's the fluffy dance record you should get. And now, as we are doing this, there has been a remix album that's out, with a lot of people doing really, really crafty reworks of all of those songs. Mark Ronson's on it. There's a track with Madonna and Missy Elliott, which if you heard her first record a couple of years ago, you wouldn't think there's a leap from what A to B that you didn't think, oh, well, Missy Elliott, Madonna are obviously going to be on this. But it's called Club Future Nostalgia. So those two together is a really neat way to spend some time and probably do some workouts. Maybe, if you're into that.
So, in the spirit of England, everything old is new again. Literally every band or artist that you love in the 80s and 90s is putting out new music. For example, you know, like Simple Minds is going to tour with OMD, and they're both making albums, things like that. But there's a new Tricky album coming out, which I'm very excited about. Comes out, I think, on September 4th. But a lot of that Bristol trip hop stuff from the early and mid 90s is coming back. So I want to recommend Massive Attack Mezzanine. I know it's old, but that sort of bookended with the first Portishead record is really the perfect soundtrack for any particular type of day. If it's a sunny day and you want to stay inside, if it's a rainy day and you want to be miserable, it's great. If you're brokenhearted, it's great. If you're in a pandemic and you're like, oh my God, the world is falling apart, it's also great. So both of those records sort of lumped together into one.
Awesome. All right, for my second pick, I have very recently reconnected with an artist that I first got introduced to way back on, you know, we were talking about night flights and that stuff. MTV had a show called 120 Minutes, and they played a lot of British stuff that I would never have heard of. And one of them was an artist called Jane Siler. And I very, very recently, I don't know, she just kind of flooded back into my mind, and I started digging up all these songs that I used to hear on 120 Minutes, and have really like become kind of a passionate follower of her. So the easiest place to find her, I think, currently is YouTube. If you, her name is Siberry, Siberry, and look for a song called One More Color, which was her first single, and it's just an incredible song. It's got a really great beat. It's a really lush arrangement, and it's lots of layered harmonies and stuff, and it's just gorgeous. So I highly recommend using that as a place to start exploring some of her cataloging. All right. If we go super quick, we can do round 3 if we want to do round 3.
Okay. Sure. I will just say real quick on the Jane Siberry thing, When I Was a Boy is a fantastic album as well.
Yeah.
That's where I got started with her, and I absolutely love it. And you've heard her stuff before. She was on the Crow soundtrack. Anyway, so real quick, I would point you in the direction of Kate Tempest. Her is good. Let Them Eat Chaos, which is her second album, has got some amazing stuff on it. But I really like Everybody Down, which was her album. So check out Circles is I think that was released as a single, but she's sort of like a spoken word rap artist type of thing. And you know, I absolutely love it. So check that out and check it.
Yeah, so I'll go with I'm gonna go a little underground here. The Close Lobsters were this really cool sort of C86 post-punk jangle band in the 80s, and they're back now. Their new album is the ungodly long title, as long as this panel, called Post-Neo Anti-Arte Pavera in the Forest of Symbols. Just Google search Close Lobster's new album, and you'll find it. But if you like sort of like post-punk and angst, and you like a little guitar in it too, I'd go with that.
I'm going to recommend a kind of a tribute record, which is kind of cheating, but there it is. Tiny Changes, which is a Frightened Rabbit covers collection that came out last year. It actually goes to benefit the nonprofit that Scott's parents founded to help mental illness issues in the UK. Got a couple of things from The Hold Steady and Lauren from Churches, and quite a few really good acts. Right on Dynamite, and let's see, Ben Gibbard and the Twilight Sad, who is also a really good band.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tiny Changes. It's basically covering tracks from the first Frightened Rabbit record. And like I said, the profits go to the Tiny Changes charity, which is pretty cool.
All right. We are pretty much out of time. I just want to say a very quick thank you to all of my fellow panelists. Thank you for a really enjoyable discussion. And to our audience, thank you so much for hanging out with us. I hope
Unfortunately, I didn't regenerate and I'm still me.
Ah,
sorry.
But you are the best you could possibly be. Thank you all for hanging out with us today. Look for more BritTrack programming. You can follow BritTrack by searching at BritTrack on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and the YouTubes. We've got a lot of other panels coming up this weekend, so look for everything we've got to offer. Thank you all so much. Hope you have a great weekend. Spread love and be safe.